He was an amazing husband, friend, father.
We noticed like some erratic behavior. She's kind of acting out, but we were like, oh, she was just being a teenage girl.
He was suffering in silence, and he lost his battle due to his mental illness.
I can blink and I see all the lights of the ambulances and the fire trucks and just screaming, and it was chaos.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Miriam Tapia, your host for today. Today on this special edition of South Florida Live, we're dedicating our half hour to National Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month, remembering those who lost their battle with mental illness, understanding the signs and symptoms, and reminding everyone that there is help available to you. Let's look at the numbers, shall we? Data from CDC finds suicide is one of the leading causes of death in the United States. Over 49,000 people died by suicide in 2022. That's one death every 11 minutes. Breaking this down a little bit more, men make up nearly 80% of suicides in the U.S. Although suicide rates decreased between 2018 to 2020, the data shows rates returned to their peak in 2022. To help us better understand this crisis and recognize the warning signs is Dr. Daniel Bober. Thank you so much for being on South Florida today.
Great to be here, Miriam.
South Florida Live. Today I did that mistake once. But first, let's talk about those numbers. Those numbers are astonishing. Walk me through the numbers and why men are leading this.
So men are leading it because men are more successful at trying to commit suicide, whereas women attempt more. Also, with traditional male gender roles, men are not really allowed to talk about their feelings because they're perceived as weak or ineffectual. So they don't talk about their feelings as much, and they're less likely to seek help. Also, men tend to use firearms to commit suicide, and firearms are quick and irreversible, and so they're more lethal, and that's why the rates are higher in men.
And let's talk about the scope of this, right? Because it's the U.S. Is the U.S. the leading country, leading in the worldwide, or
it's not, but it's certainly one of the highest.
Which is the highest?
Actually, I don't know what the highest is, but certainly this can be traced back to a few things. In 1997, there was a very powerful opiate released into the market that we all know about, and this caused suicide to increase 2% every year in women. Also, the record number of firearms. Firearms are highly lethal. More than 50% of suicides are a result of a firearm. So if we're really going for the public health approach, we need to focus not on the why, but also on the how. And we can reduce suicides by reducing access to lethal means, meaning if you have a firearm in your home, to make sure you lock it up to secure it, make sure your kids don't have access to it. If you have old prescriptions of medication, particularly opioids or sedatives, make sure those are disposed of or locked up as well. And finally, barriers on bridges. These are all public health measures that can reduce suicide.
Those are good tips. Let's talk about the month of September. We're obviously raising awareness. It's a National Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. Talk to me about the importance of this month.
I think it's important because we need to destigmatize suicide and we need to destigmatize mental illness. We need to look at the fact that there are so many different risk factors that people carry when it comes to suicide, whether it's substance use, a previous history of depression, unemployment, poverty. But there are things that we can do to address the problem, because suicide very often is not about mental illness per se. It's about a moment of crisis. So I think we need to come together as a community and look at the people around us and take our eyes off our phone for a second and realize that there are people that are suffering out there. And even if they seem like they're okay, they're not. So we need to check in on them from time to time.
Can you tell me a little bit about the warning signs that maybe we should look out for?
So the warning signs are obviously talking about death, withdrawing, giving your possessions away, changes in your sleep, changes in your appetite, not hanging out with your friends, withdrawing from social activities. All these are warning signs that you need to really check in on someone.
And obviously we want to end and break the stigma about mental health. How can we encourage people to talk about mental illness?
I think there are things that are going on already, like if you look at social media or in the world of movies, there are different characters now that have mental illness. For example, the show Homeland had a very successful CIA agent who had bipolar disorder. So we need to show that there are people in this world that are very successful and have changed the world. For example, like Robin Williams and Winston Churchill. All these are people,
as well,
right? These are all people that had mental illness and still were able to change the world. So we need to normalize it, right? When you're at a party and you tell someone you're depressed, they look at you very differently than if you tell them you have diabetes. People still view mental illness as a basic flaw, a character defect, and a weakness, and that's what we need to change. so these people don't have to hide in the shadows anymore.
And there is help out there, of course, right? There is a number people can call, right?
Absolutely. There's, of course, the 988 suicide hotline. There's resources through SAMHSA, through NAMI. These are all resources that people can access publicly.
Perfect. And if people want to know more about your services, there's a website. We just put it up. It's drbober.com.
drbober.com, yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Bober.
My pleasure. Great to be here.
The importance of breaking the stigma about mental health is so important, as Kristen Sanchez tells us the story of a devoted father, husband, and member of the Miami-Dade Fire Department who, despite always being ready to help others, he was fighting his own battle.
Today we share a story of loss, love, and the will to make a difference. Carolyn Acosta opens up about her late husband, Alex Acosta, a Miami-Dade firefighter whose battle with PTSD ended tragically. Here's Carolyn in her own words, sharing her mission to save lives through awareness.
Alex was amazing. He was my best friend. He was an amazing husband, friend, father, co-worker. He was pretty awesome. Alex was like your real life hero. He was super dedicated to Miami-Dade Air Rescue. He loved his job. Unfortunately, he was suffering in silence. He was diagnosed with PTSD, and he lost his battle in July due to his mental illness. Unfortunately, somebody as strong as Alex was dealing with this, and he was suffering, and we didn't know about this. It was just kept in such a secret, from us, from everyone.
If you could talk to anybody right now who's maybe dealing with that, what would you tell them?
It's okay to ask for help. I feel like a lot of these men and women are scared to come out and ask for help with fear of maybe losing their job or looking as not as strong. When in fact that's complete opposite. I feel like we're all human and we all need to feel these feelings, and it's okay. I mean, that's what we do. If you're a human being and you have sympathy and you're empathetic, I mean, these are feelings you should be feeling. We, in honor of Alex, and we want his legacy to continue because he did dedicate his life to saving lives, we started First Alarm Foundation, which is our mission is to create awareness and to break that stigma within the first responder community. These feelings that you're feeling, you find that there's more people that are feeling the same. We do have a run that we're doing with the American Suicide Prevention that's in October 27th, that if you'd like to join our team, it brings funds for their foundation. But there'll be more in the works. That way we can open that dialect with them. And also I feel like a lot of spouses are kind of left in the dark when it comes to certain things. And I think having that community would be very helpful as well. So if we can reach first responders, we can reach them through that way from home. So that's the plan.
Carolyn Acosta is stepping up to break the silence around mental health, especially in high-stress professions. Her courage to speak out and foster change is a powerful reminder that help is out there and it's okay to ask for it. So if you're struggling or you know someone who is, remember that you're not alone.
Welcome back. When you need help, you dial 911 and a team of first responders are there. But who do you first responders call when they're in crisis? I have the Chief Operating Officer of 211 Broward, Dr. Francisco Izaza, here to tell us more about the helpline that's providing resources to those needing support. Hi, Dr. Francisco, how are you?
Good morning.
Good morning. Let's talk about 211 Broward and the mission that you guys do. What's your mission?
We are a 24 comprehensive helpline, offering information and referral to community resources, and we're also a crisis helpline.
Yeah, and I love what you guys are doing in our community in Broward. Do you guys offer any programs, aside from Hero for Hero, which we'll talk about in a minute, that you can help the community go to these programs and talk about mental health?
Well, you talked about suicide prevention, right? So there's the 988 number. That's a national 3-digit number that you could call if you're in crisis or if you're concerned about a loved one. we answer those calls in Broward.
And let's talk about Hero for Hero. It's a wonderful state initiative. Can you tell me a little bit about that program?
So the Hero for Hero helpline is a line dedicated for our first responders. It's a comprehensive peer support helpline. That means it's for first responders, answered by first responders.
And so let's say like how we saw the segment before in our last break, before the break, we saw someone, a first responder at Miami-Dade Fire Rescue. What would you tell those who are watching? What can, breaking that stigma that you can talk to someone, even though you are a first responder, they can go to Hero for Hero as well, right?
Yeah, there are heroes. They're there to answer our calls all the time, right? Mm-hmm. We're here to answer their calls. We're in this together. We want to be here for support whenever they need it. It's available 24/7, and it's confidential.
Have you guys received any feedback regarding the program?
It's the feedback that we get. It is a very important line for our first responders, to provide them a place that's safe, that they could talk to someone whenever they need it, and it's also for their family members.
And what do you hope the community takes away from having your organization and, of course, Hero for Hero?
There's a couple things that I would say. You're not alone. There is hope. So when you need that, you could call our helpline 24 hours a day to get support.
Thank you so much, Dr. Isasa, for being here and the incredible work that you're doing in our community. Welcome back to South Florida Live. Today, we're meeting the Menendez family who lost their son and brother, Jason, over a decade ago. Now, they're speaking out and sharing how they're celebrating his memory 15 years after his passing. Jason Menendez was born in 1995, the middle child to a Cuban-American household. Jason was raised in Kendall with his two siblings, Justin and Jenna.
Jason was very mellow, very sweet, but very determined.
He would always either do something or say something or smile at someone.
He was funny.
Jason loved to play sports, play the guitar, and ride his skateboard. But most importantly, he loved hanging out with his family. So it's safe to say that the Menendez family lived a normal life. You didn't see anything wrong with Jason?
No, unfortunately I didn't.
What were the days like leading up to his death?
They were normal.
On April 28th, 2009, everything was forever changed.
That day I do remember him saying he didn't want to go to school, but what kid wants to go to school? And I'm like, I don't want to go to work, but we got to do what we got to do. That day he did call me to see if he could drop off Jenna at my office. He said he wanted to go home because he wanted to skateboard. And if he brought Jenna, then Jenna was on her scooter, and then he couldn't do the skateboarding that he wanted to with his friends. So I told him, okay, go ahead and drop her off at my work. I discovered it when I got home.
What happened?
He took his life.
Jason Menendez passed away at the age of 13, a month before his 14th birthday. And at the time, Justin was 15 and little sister Jenna was 8.
Like coming home that night, it was eerie. I mean, I remember bits and pieces of it, but I remember my sister and I got out of the car, and to this day I can hear the scream that my mom let out that kind of is why Jenna and I ran into the room. And we just ran in because we heard something, and then that's when we saw him.
From what we know, there was no motive. He did leave a note, a very vague 2-sentence note, which really didn't mean anything. He just wanted us to know that it wasn't because of us.
A moment that was seconds turned into minutes, into hours, into days. The family held a funeral service for Jason where family, friends, and the community gathered to say their final goodbyes. A moment that was difficult for Debbie.
I was numb. I was there, but I wasn't there.
One thing that I do remember from my brother's funeral is my mom stood in front of the casket the entire time, gave a hug to every single person that walked in, and it was her consoling and hugging and telling his classmates and his friends that it was going to be okay.
A year and a half after Jason's death, Justin and Debbie gave their pain a purpose.
We started a nonprofit in his memory. We titled it the JAM Foundation. Those are his initials. We started very low-key, making brochures, hotlines, resources, letting people know that there's there is help.
Justin would see and save the lives of so many students around South Florida that eventually he became a therapist.
Honestly, I never had any interest in mental health growing up until I experienced this and then realized how much need there was for it. So I'm like a therapist on the side. I can see clients in private practice, but then I'm a full-time school counselor for middle school.
Jenna and Justin applaud their mom for staying strong for them after all these years.
I don't think anyone I know, me nor him, could have done it the way she did it. Even now, still going through it. She put on the cape and she was a superhero for herself and for us.
It's been 15 years since Jason's passing, and while time heals all wounds, one thing is for sure. The love for Jason is still present till this day.
It's just part of our story. We don't dwell on it. We talk about him like he's around. I don't know. I know we'll see him again at some point.
We would kind of advocate it as we're turning our tragedy into triumph.
Every year, in honor of Jason, the family attends the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's Out of the Darkness community walk to spread awareness and support families going through the same thing. This year, the walk in Miami is happening on October 13th and will be in Fort Lauderdale on October 27th. For more information, you can visit the website on your screen. The National Alliance for Mental Illness is on the forefront of mental health issues impacting Miami-Dade and Monroe counties. Today, President and CEO of NAMI Miami-Dade, Susan Holtzman, is here to share how her organization is helping the community, recognizing the signs and providing suicide awareness and prevention trainings. Thank you for being here, Susan. I love what NAMI Miami does here in our community. But first and foremost, for those who don't know, can you talk to me about the mission that NAMI Miami does?
Absolutely. What we do is provide education, support, and advocacy for people living with mental health conditions and their loved ones. And we are peer-oriented, just like the heroes that we were talking about earlier. So everyone who works at or volunteers at NAMI has some kind of connection to mental illness and mental health.
Yes, and I love that you guys do programs and events. You guys are creating a community here in Miami-Dade. Talk to me more about that.
Very much so. So we have educational programming. We provide suicide awareness and prevention programming. It's called QPR, Question, Persuade, Respond, and that helps people to recognize, as the doctor was saying earlier, what are the signs and what do you do? And we will go out to the community and give that training to anyone who wants it. We'll go to your school, your church, your business. We also have it free online at namimiami.org, so you can sign up for that. And then we do educational programming in the schools. We have something called Ending the Silence for Youth, where we teach young people, middle age and higher, to understand the difference, say, between sadness and depression. You know, what is mental illness? What is a threat to your mental health? How do you talk about it? How do you get help? And then we also offer that for families and for staff, so that we give the youth the language to speak about their own needs, and then their families, their teachers, their coaches, the language to communicate with them, so that everyone can have a more open conversation about mental health.
Yeah, and you're seeing a lot of an increase of mental health. Why is that? And why are people not going to each other to talk about mental health?
Well, there is a lot of stigma, I think, in every single community. A lot of that, too, we're seeing is generational. Young people are more interested in talking about it than the older generations are. I think until you get like me, where I'm like, okay, now I'll just talk about anything because I've seen a lot. So that's part of it. And then giving them the opportunity to say things out loud that maybe they didn't want to. So we have support groups for people who live with mental health conditions, so they can talk openly to each other about that shared experience. And we have support groups for family members, so they also can say, not only it's been difficult dealing with my family member, but you know, how do you do it? Where do you go? So you can build that network of people to talk to.
Yeah, and talking about networking, right? You guys offer events, obviously, you know, you guys have a film festival, obviously opening the conversation between each other for those who need it. Tell me the importance of that.
Well, just being able to talk about it in any different setting. So the film festival we have coming up is a short film festival. We did an international call for submissions. We received almost 100 submissions. We're going to be showing, I think, 9 short films Mostly they were about anxiety, so that's a little indicator. That's kind of the topic right now. We have one that deals with suicide, both the generational impact and the cultural impact. A couple of them are comedies and animated. So it's sort of addressing the issue in a different setting, in a more comfortable setting, a more social setting.
Susan, thank you so much for what your organization does, and thank you for being here on South Florida Live.
Thank you.